Welcome to Let's Set Your Table, the food service and hospitality podcast that brings you the experts, trending news, and product reviews from across the industry. So grab a chair with your hosts and join us as we set your table.
In this episode, John D. and Melissa Marguerite visit with Patrick Garrigan, Central Regional Sales Manager at Midwest Specialty Products in Wisconsin. Listen in as they discuss the importance of how your napkin and hand towels in the restroom, yes, I said napkins and hand towels, can impact the overall dining experience for your patrons.
I think that owner-operators spend a lot of time thinking about the food, right? What's in the center of the plate, how it's prepared, how it's going to taste, and then how it's plated and presented to a diner. And I think that is really important, but equally as important is the rest of the presentation at the table. And that's where napkins come in.
Learn how by using the right type and material of that dinner napkin and beverage napkin can generate offers and increase your revenue turn with your patrons, customers, and guests while dining in or out. You'll find that no two disposable dinner napkins, beverage naps, and hand towels in your restroom are the same. So if you think that napkin is only used to wipe your mouth or your hands, well, we want you to think again, because it's all here today at the table. Well, hey, industry pros, owners, and operators, I'm your host, John D., and we're welcome you back to yet another episode of Let's Set Your Table. I'm joined today with my esteemed colleague at the Hoodie Group, Melissa Marguerite. She is one of our senior directors of business development. She's based out of the great city of Chicago and the Hoodie Group Chicago showroom. Melissa was instrumental and a huge asset to our team on the build-out, development, design, and decorating of that space. What an asset and resource that is for our professionals. Melissa works closely with our customers in the area of tabletop, furniture, uniforms, disposables at our showroom in downtown Chicago. Melissa, so great to have you with us today. And I got to ask you, Melissa, it's that time of year again, and we know what that is, right? It's not Christmas time. What time of the year is it, Melissa?
NRA.
Oh, it's NRA. So are you ready?
I'm trying to get ready. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of fun. It's tiring, exhausting,
It is.
But looking forward to it.
Well, we are too, and I'm so grateful that I'm going to be able to hang with you for a couple days and see you. We all are from the Southeastern team here. So, Melissa, what do we have on the table today? And a really unique guest. So why don't you tell us?
So today we have Patrick Garrigan with us today from Midwest Specialty Products.
Cool.
And we are going to be talking about napkins.
Napkins?
Yes.
Seriously, napkins?
Napkins.
Wow.
A lot of good things.
Lots of good things. So, Melissa, why would an owner, operator, an industry professional want to talk about napkins?
Well, there's a variety of reasons, predominantly cleanliness, right?
Mm-hmm.
They want to keep the patron clean, table clean. But it also can enhance the presentation at the table. And let's not forget about napkins in the restrooms. So it's
that's right.
across
That's
the board.
right.
So and we can also increase revenue with napkins.
Well, we got a great guest coming up, but folks, we need you to just stay with us one more minute or so because we have to recognize our sponsor.
This episode of Let's Set Your Table is brought to you by the Hoodie Group Chicago showroom. The Hoodie Group offers professional broker services in the food service and hospitality industry with over 40 years experience. The Hoodie Group's product showroom boasts over 4,000 square feet of some of the best product lines in the industry. So if you're interested in scheduling a free in-person or virtual appointment with a product specialist, please visit HoodieGroupShowroom.com. That's HODE groupshowroom.com.
Okay, so we have up with us here Mr. Patrick Garrigan, I understand, from Midwest Specialty Products, and we're going to talk napkins. So, Pat, welcome to Let's Set Your Table.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm incredibly honored to be here today. This is my first podcast, so I am excited.
Well, we hope to have you back multiple times because there's some good stuff to be had and discussed. You know, we as Melissa and I and Nick are out on the streets all the time, the whole Hoodie Group team, and interfacing with our customers. And, you know, we are consumers too. We go out there and we consume. And it's amazing because once you're in this business, you look at everything differently, right? So, but, you know, we're talking about something today that you manufacture, that you are passionate about, that, think about it, every eating establishment in the world, if they serve food commercially, hopefully, and like our home kitchens as well, you got to have a napkin. Everybody uses it unless you use something else. I'd hope you're using a napkin, right?
Absolutely.
So,
Napkins are incredibly important.
So what is the most important thing that you want to, for those listening? And Melissa, I'm so glad is with us, because Melissa deals with tabletop all day long. She's one of our pros, and Nick and I don't get to play with it a whole lot down here in the Southeast. Now, we are playing with you some up in the Northeast, Pat. We're really proud to do that. But how can we get an operator to think more about that napkin and the impact that napkin could have on the dining experience for the customer?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that owner-operators spend a lot of time thinking about the food, right? What's in the center of the plate, how it's prepared, how it's going to taste, and then how it's plated and presented to a diner. And I think that is really important. But equally as important is the rest of the presentation at the table. And that's where napkins come in. You wouldn't serve somebody a steak and use, say, a plastic cup. Similarly, you wouldn't use a low-end one-ply napkin if you want them to have a really good dining experience. And so there are a number of different ways that napkins can be used to enhance experiences and presentation at the table. The quality of the napkin is one. You can use a printed napkin to enhance your brand experience. And also, as Melissa mentioned earlier, just having a good quality napkin that is useful, that is absorbent, that is soft, all of the things that you need from a napkin is also really important.
Well, I don't know about you guys, but I get very frustrated when I go to eat and I don't have a proper napkin. And it happens a lot. And I think there's a lot of cutting corners today because of expense and food costs. Melissa, what do you find?
I find sometimes you get these restaurants that use or establishments that use napkins, a very thin single ply napkin, and they'll give you a stack of them. And I think their philosophy is they're very inexpensive. They can hand them out, but studies have been done that a higher quality napkin is going to end up costing the establishment less in the long run, because they're going to hand me one, maybe two. If the restaurant you had gone to had handed you two napkins instead of inexpensive secondary napkin, you could have, they would be able to save money.
My wife and I ate recently at a seafood restaurant down here in Florida on the coast. And, it was middle of the road, wasn't high end, wasn't low end. And we went in and of course, the first napkin that you get, it was in a dinner roll. So it was rolled up with the cutlery. And it was Patrick, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm learning more about the naps now. Air inlaid, much like a linen-like napkin, but disposable.
Yep.
Air laid.
Yep.
Not air inlaid, but air laid.
Yes.
So they gave us that. And of course, I wanted to eat some peel and eat shrimp. So I had some steamed shrimp with some Old Bay seasoning. And we got into our dinner, and I think I ordered a couple other apps, and we were just having some fun dining and whatever, my wife and I. And, the napkin got messy because of, the hands, wiping the hands and whatnot, as it usually does when you're eating peel and eat shrimp. So I asked the server, I said, hey, can you bring me over another napkin, thinking I was going to get another air-laid napkin. She brought me over, to Melissa's point, a stack of really cheap napkins that you buy like at the supply warehouse, right? Just a cheap napkin. And I was burning through those like no tomorrow. In fact, she had to bring back a second and third time more napkins. So, and then she, of course, brought over the wet naps, which are the nastiest thing ever. That's another conversation. But yeah, I get it. And, I got to be honest with you. It took away from the dining experience because it made me get up and go to the restroom and wash my hands and come back. And I still wasn't done eating, but at some point, I just couldn't get that residue off my hands.
Yeah, I love this story because it really speaks to the value of a napkin and how it can impact your experience at a restaurant. You had an opportunity to experience both ends of the spectrum when it comes to the quality of a napkin. So you sat down, the presentation at the table sounded amazing. You had a beautiful air-laid napkin, soft, it's absorbent, it won't come apart. those things were important to you, right? And it enhanced your experience. Then you needed additional napkins, and you had the opposite experience. You were given a 1-ply or a 2-ply that the waitress instinctively knew you were going to need a stack of them because they are not as absorbent and they're not as good, especially if you're eating something with your hands. If you're having barbecue or peel and eat shrimp, you have to have a high-quality napkin. The last thing you want is to begin wiping your hands and whatever is on your hands not be absorbed by the napkin. Or even worse, if you're using a 1-ply and you have it come apart and the napkin begins to stick to your fingers.
That's what it did.
Yeah.
And that's what it did. I swear awful. It was recycled. It was a recycled napkin.
And think about how that left an impression on your mind about that restaurant.
And of course, as I said a little while ago, guys, we're in the business, so we look at things differently. But at the same token, if we work with professional owners and operators, we work very hard every day to try to help them save money and make more money. And how do you make more money? You want to serve more food, or you want to put more people in beds. So
the waste involved with that also. So the stacks of napkins that they bring to you, they don't think about what that costs, but also the waste that stack of napkins, once it's on your table, even if you haven't used all of those napkins, they have to throw those all away. The cost of giving you one additional nice napkin, an air-laid napkin versus that entire stack, the cost savings would have been beneficial for them to just give you the second napkin.
I agree. Melissa, as you're consulting out of our Hody Group Chicago showroom, as you consult with operators and owners, does the napkin come up in the setting for the table? Where do you guys draw the line or not? And it's okay to say it doesn't ever come up, but we do rep, a company like Midwest Specialty Products. So we want to sell more of those napkins, especially for being the disposable kings and queens that we are, because that's our job every day.
So I think the napkin often does come up because we take them and we talk to them about tabletop, and then we bring them down to our showroom, the Hody showroom, and talk about disposables. And we talk about napkins. And I think one of the things that's really important on the table is the beverage napkin. When we talked about earlier of keeping the table clean and looking nice, you want your glass to be sitting on a beverage napkin. And, the beverage napkin, they talk about the color and how it coordinates with the tabletop. So, and very, very rarely do we ever see a non-disposable bev nap. So a bev nap. So then we can start talking about color and presentation, texture, all of the things that the napkin can play off of the table setting that they're picking out, the glassware, the china, etc. So I think it's very important. And then the next step would be to talk about branding. Patrick mentioned branding is so key. So how can we help them brand? They talk about printed, embossed table plates, etc., glassware with logos on it. We can do that with our napkins, where we can help them set their brand.
So where do you think? Let's kind of draw some sort of a visual analogy here for our operators and owners listening. Where does that air-laid napkin play? Where does it not play in establishments or in hospitality, do you think? Or does it play everywhere?
I think it can play everywhere.
Especially with color, right? We just don't have to use white.
Exactly. So, and we can also logo. If they're interested in logoing their plates, we can also do the same with a beautiful air-laid napkin.
It beats that nasty paper. It really does. So, but Pat, you got to work on those wet naps. Those are nasty. They shouldn't even be sold anymore.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%.
Wow.
I would say the best solution to get rid of those is to have a napkin at the table that is going to be soft and absorbent and be useful in a way that you don't then need the wet naps. They are really just an added expense. And if your napkin is doing the job it's supposed to do, the wet naps become obsolete.
I think them just bringing me a lemon wedge with some warm water that I could have, rinsed my hands with a good napkin, I think would have been, more impactful for the experience. Again, this was a $200 dinner. Wasn't $50, which is even hard to find today.
Right. And the last thing that you expect to do is have to go to the restroom afterwards to wash your hands.
Twice. because you just want to get that nastiness off your hands.
Mhm.
And so what other thoughts, guys, that we, as the owner operator are looking at this potential category, what other things that they should be considering that's important for them?
Well, I would just add to some of the points that Melissa made earlier. When you are considering what type of napkin to use, certainly I think cost is a part of that consideration. But you also have to remember that if you're going to go with a lower cost napkin, you are most likely going to be using more. It's going to lessen the experience at the table, and you're going to be using more of those supposedly lower cost napkins, resulting in most likely a higher cost at the end of the day. There are really two ways that we at Midwest Specialty Products will sell our air-laid napkins. We will upsell people from tissue napkins using that philosophy that I just spoke about, that the air-laid napkin at the end of the day is actually going to be less expensive because you're only going to need one to do the same job that a stack of the tissue napkins will do. We also talk to owner-operators about moving them away from linen napkins into our air-laid napkins. In terms of quality and in terms of usage, the air-laid napkins perform the exact same as a linen napkin. Really, the reason that most owner-operators will choose linen is just the heritage of the industry. It's something that they've done for a long time. They have a belief that their diners or their patrons have an expectation for a linen napkin. But anybody who's had the opportunity to use our high-quality air-laid napkins will tell you they work equally as well. So we can move people out of linen because of the quality of the napkins and the ease of use. And then there's also an environmentally friendly story to tell of air-laid versus linen. So if you think about a linen napkin, it is delivered by usually a uniform or laundry company. And so there is an environmental impact of that truck having to drive from the warehouse to the restaurant. Then that napkin is used. It has to be stored somewhere in the restaurant. Then it's picked up again. It's taken back to the warehouse. It's laundered. There are all of those gallons of water used. There are the chemicals used to clean it. And then it's brought back to the restaurant. So our disposable napkins have a much smaller environmental footprint than the linen do. And the last point that I would make is that studies have shown that linen napkins, after being used, washed, and returned to the restaurants, still show traces of DNA on them of previous users. Think about that, John, the next time you go and you have a nice steak and now you're going to wipe your face and that napkin, that linen napkin, has somebody else's DNA on it.
Well, listen, not to bring it up, but since COVID, we've all have a new appreciation for germs and germ transmission, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it's got to cost a fortune to have these napkins washed, laundered, and sanitized, so to speak, and then delivered back, like you just said.
Well, I will add to that point, John, and these, I've gone through this with restaurants before. They get charged for napkins. They get thrown away all the time, these linen napkins. They get charged for each and every one. It costs them a lot if they were to do an analysis. Another point is in Europe, they don't use as many linen napkins as they use an air-laid type napkin. And the linen napkins are not very absorbent. I don't know if you've ever tried to wipe anything on a table with a linen napkin, but it just kind of moves the liquid around. With our air-laid napkins, you can see the absorbency and that it picks up the liquid.
That's absolutely true. And in fact, each time that they get laundered, they are less and less absorbent. They become a little bit rougher to the touch.
Don't they starch those? I mean, they got to make them look good. So did they add some sort, or is that just the chemical compound they use for the whole laundering side?
I think you're absolutely right. I think that is a part of the cleaning process, is they want to make sure that they look good, even if it reduces their functionality.
Yes.
Well, when I knew we were going to do this and Melissa and I discussed it, I thought this is a great topic because, again, one of the things that we do at the Hoodie Group is we bring topics up and bring things top of mind that operators typically don't want to think about, or, everybody's busy. It's a challenge to run a great operation in a dining establishment or a hospitality group. It's not easy today because you're vying for competition. You're vying for that patron who can afford to come and sit down or spend the night. And you better have all your ducks in a row, and you better give them a great experience. And I think that's the name of the game today, is how do I differentiate yourself? And I know we at the Hody Group, we talk a lot to our reps that we work with every day, and our manufacturers, of how we can differentiate, your brand and your deliverable out there in the marketplace that, operators they have never given any thought to. So go ahead, Melissa.
So one of the things I touched on at the very beginning was restrooms and the cleanliness of restrooms. And there have been numerous studies that have been done, and it's ranked number 2 in many of the studies of the impression that it leaves on a patron, is if you've got this wonderful dining experience and then you go into the restroom and there's bits of paper towels all over the floor, et cetera, from the roll dispenser, it leaves them an impression that perhaps the kitchen isn't as clean as they'd like it to be. So it's a really important piece of the dining experience. And these roll towels, the towels are so thin that people go to grab a piece off the roll towel and a piece falls on the ground, and they keep trying to grab. With our linen-like air-laid napkins stacked in the bathroom, the impression is just elevated for the customer.
It's like a country club.
Mm-hmm.
You feel that country club. For those that have had the pleasure of being able to play or go to a country club and experience that, it's a higher level of deliverable. And I agree with that, Melissa. Nothing frustrates me more. And again, have to say this, and I know our distributor partners and our reps that we work with have to sell these air blowers for your hand drying. Mm-hmm. It drives me crazy that I can't just take a towel off the roll or some decent type of hand towel to wipe my hands when I get done using the restroom. It drives me nuts. And I know everybody wants to be paper free, but if you ever look down to see dirty water on the floor laying underneath that dryer, it's disgusting.
Yeah, I think you make a really good point. If you consider why you are reaching for that paper towel or that air-laid guest towel in the restroom to dry your hands, it's because your hands are both wet, but they may also contain some sort of germ or contaminant. Now you're putting it into a blower that's blowing that contaminant all over the place.
Back at you.
Right
too.
back at you. And not only your own, but everyone else who came before you in that restroom.
Yeah.
So using an air-laid guest towel in your restroom really enhances the experience, and it improves the cleanliness overall.
Yeah. So, Pat, how does Midwest Specialty Products compare to the competitors? Why should we buy your product, for the operator owner listening to this podcast?
That's a great question. Midwest Specialty Products is a small family-owned company. And with that comes a lot of value to the operators. We are very flexible, very nimble. If they have a need that is not being met by their current provider, we can meet that need and we can do it really quickly, which means our lead times are less. We have dedicated salespeople in each of their markets, something our competitor doesn't have. And we have dedicated customer service people who are dedicated to this specific product line of ours. Also something that our competitor doesn't have. Those are ways that we try to differentiate ourselves directly. And then we also use higher quality product. Our shipping on time, our lead times and our on-time shipments are also at better rates than our competitors. So each of those metrics are really, really important to our distributor partners because they're really, really important to the owner-operators.
And price point, how competitive are you with price point?
We are very competitive. We understand our place in the market, and we know that we would not get a seat at the table if we cannot be competitively from a price standpoint.
Awesome.
So, Patrick, I would like to review a little bit of your custom capabilities in making custom napkins. I think that they are, when we talked about branding and what the patrons see on the table. And I'd like you to talk a little bit about the tableside pack. And I think that's so valuable to the customers sitting at the table waiting 15, 20 minutes for their food. What are they going to do? What are they going to look at? So if you could talk about that a little bit,
That's
that would be
awesome. Great point, Melissa.
Yeah, that's a great question. You mentioned branding, and I think the easiest way to think of printed napkins is to think about enhancing your brand, increasing the brand awareness of each of the patrons that are sitting down to dine at your restaurant. If you have your logo on your napkin, they will see that, and your brand gets reinforced that way. At Midwest Specialty Products, our custom printed napkins are done using a digital print process. And the biggest difference between digital is it gives you a great deal of flexibility in terms of color and images. So with a digital print process, you can print multiple images within the same case of napkins. And there are no additional charges to do that. And there are no additional charges for multiple colors as well. So now an owner-operator can begin to get really creative with how they're going to use their napkins. We touched at the beginning, we talked about using napkins as a way to increase your revenue, to sell more.
Important.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not simply just a place to wipe your hands or a place to set your beverage. It can also be a place to advertise. You can put your Monday dinner specials. You could because we can do multiple images, you could have a Monday napkin that outlines the dinner specials, a Tuesday napkin, a Wednesday napkin, a Thursday napkin. You could have a calendar of events, Thursday night trivia, and here's a band coming on Friday. It really is only dependent on how creative that an owner-operator wants to be. They can also use those napkins to upsell. So if you think about drink specials, that's a great way for an owner-operator to enhance the revenue. Desserts. If you go to a restaurant and at the end of the meal you're looking at a dessert menu and you're reading about it and you're kind of like, well, it sounds good, but I've eaten enough already. And then that waiter or waitress rolls out the dessert cart and you see the desserts. It is really hard to say no once you see that cheesecake or that tiramisu. Similarly, you can put a really high quality, high resolution image of those desserts on the napkin. And now that piece of apple pie or whatever it is staring at you the entire meal. And it's really hard to say no when you see, maybe the whipped cream dripping off of that piece of pumpkin pie or something like that. So those are ways that our napkins can be used to not only be a place to maintain a strong presentation at the table and a way to clean your hands, but also ways to enhance the revenue per diner in each table.
You know what they say, we eat with our eyes, right?
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, guys, we're going to have to leave it right here. Time flies when you're having fun. So anyway, thank you, Pat, for joining us today. Melissa, so great to have you. I know you're a busy lady for us, and we appreciate all that you do at the Hody Group. We're going to have to leave it right here. That's all the time that we have for us today. If you'd like to reach any of us at the Hody Group or Pat at Midwest Specialty Products, please check out our show notes for our contact information attached to this podcast. Also, please like, follow, and share the Let's Set Your Table podcast. And if you're so moved, we would be grateful that you leave us a positive review on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, and YouTube Music. We're on YouTube Music now. Pretty cool. We'd also would encourage you to leave us your comments, feedback, questions, and topics that you have an interest in and you would like us to discuss in future episodes. And we'll see you next time right here at Let's Set Your Table.
Please join us again for another episode of Let's Set Your Table. If you would like more information, samples, or would like to consult with the Hody Group, you can visit them at thehodygroup.com. That's HODE group.com.